So for our final small clip, Mike, we've got a couple of topics. One of them is active listening, and the other one is how to empathize. So give us a little bit of insight on active listening. What's it good for?
Yes. So in this clip, we're not actually going to demonstrate active listening, which is something we will come back to later in the live session. We're just going to talk about the value and the benefit of active listening. So active listening, to be honest, is one of the most fundamental and important communication tools, if not the most fundamental and important tool that you can ever have. It's so simple, but not so easy because most people actually don't do it particularly well. When we say to listen actively, the intention is firstly to understand as much as possible the person in front of us, what they want to communicate to us. And secondly, with active listening, we want to actually help them to do that. So part of active listening is our approach that evokes a really positive response from them or an open response from them where we can really understand them.
So as the person who is being listened to, I'm going to feel understood. I'm going to feel as if you're really taking me seriously. I'm going to feel as if you are trying to look for solutions. I think there's a whole bunch of stuff that's happening there for the receiver, which is simply extremely valuable. I'm going to feel as if I've got a place and a stage and to say everything that I need to say. I think the value of active listening is just not really appreciated in terms of the various different advantages that it brings you.
That's absolutely true. So, firstly, you're making that other person feel heard and valued. But secondly, it actually has a really, really positive effect on you and that relationship because when you really listen to somebody and when you seek to understand them and not just understand, but actually are able to remember because you've given them this attention and this laser-like focus, which we mentioned earlier, people really appreciate that. I have an example. I met this guy through work about, I think it was over 6 months ago, and we had a brief discussion. And this guy came from Iran, and he had lived in Malaysia. And I spoke to him about how he had this kind of very good internationalized English, and we chatted for 5 minutes about that. And then I bumped into him the other day, so after about a 6 month gap. And I was able to recall that conversation. I said, "Oh yeah, I remember you. You're Iranian. You went to Malaysia, and I had been in Malaysia, so I mentioned that." And you could just tell that not only did he really appreciate that I had remembered these details about him, it
Yeah.
also made him really like me, if I'm being honest. It just made him respond really positively. And when we spoke about it, he started saying, "Oh, you're very professional and I appreciate this." And so in a kind of selfish sense, it has a very, very positive effect on you because people will like you for it. But in a less selfish sense, it has just a good effect on everyone because it aids understanding, it aids communication, and there really is no downside to active listening.
And it leads into the topic of empathy pretty well as well. The word empathy means, can you feel what they are feeling? And I always find that concept really difficult because if I'm honest with myself, the answer is no, I can't. I can maybe pretend, but I can't feel what they are feeling. So then what is empathizing? Empathizing is demonstrating that you are trying to feel what they are feeling, that you're trying to understand what somebody is going through. So I think that's pretty clear in terms of a meaning. But I was always angling for, well, how do you actually do it? What's the practical application of empathizing? And one person that I worked with, they said, well, if you recognize somebody's having a bad day, tell them that you think that they're having a bad day. And I said, yeah, but how does that work? And so you see somebody and you say, oh, you look tired. They say, no, don't do that. Unless you know them really well, yeah, and they're not going to take that personally. and because otherwise it will just seem like objectionable. But if you're speaking to somebody and they're sounding down, you can say something like, "That sounds as if that happened to me, that would be I'd be really depressed by that." Yeah. Or if I was in your position, I'd be so angry. Yeah. I'm just trying to put myself in your shoes. I would be really frustrated if that was me. Yeah. And so, and his take was empathizing is using the words of empathy. Yeah. So if I was in your shoes, if that was me, if I was in your position, so you're kind of taking yourself out of the, you're not saying you must be really angry about that. I'm not saying you can't say that, but the relationship may not be there for you to be able to. But I am saying, put yourself in the third person. If that was me, I'd be well angry about that, because then they can say, well, that's not you, it's me. Yeah. Or yes, I am. And that can lead into the further discussion that it takes. So to a certain extent, it's similar to the active listening approach, but it's this demonstrative usage of words that demonstrate that you're trying to feel what they are feeling in a given situation.
Mm. And I think so much of this is just the intention, having a genuine and pure intention of wanting to show them that there's empathy there and show them that they're kind of in some sense understood. If you go into it with that intention, then it's going to be difficult for you to do it wrong.
For sure, one of the objections to this is going to be, what's the point of empathizing when you can't do anything about it? And within a situation where you've got an angry customer on the phone, what's the point of empathizing when they just want a solution and you can't give them a solution? And so there is a line that needs to be respected there. But certainly the attempt at empathy is always going to be appreciated simply for the fact that there is an attempt there, as long as it's legitimate and as long as it's authentic. As long as you really do want to get to the bottom of how they're feeling in order to demonstrate that you understand, or to potentially see if there are other options or solutions open to you.
Some questions for our participants then. Firstly, on the topic of active listening, how well do you listen? Surrounding question to that, how well do you think other people would perceive that you listen? So if we were to ask your friends, your family, your co-workers, what would they say about how good of a listener you are? And the second question would be, when was the last time you had a miscommunication and what caused that miscommunication?